Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today's video is going to be a little bit on the shorter side, and it is a topic close to my heart, which is that of lore reworks. Now, Riot have actually recently put on the PvE a bunch of updated lore bios for a whole bunch of champions in the game. Now, these bios are essentially intended to replace the current bios that are on just the champion page. They're not major reworks, they're not intended to be deleting lore. They're just supposed to be short form bios so a player can look at it and say, oh, okay, that's what that champion is. And then if they're interested, they can always go check out the universe page if they want more information and to read the longer form bio. So that's all well and fine. However, a lot of these bios are coming out for champions that have not had any lore since the Great Retcon, and so we're starting to get a sense for where Riot might take these champions in the future, and interesting details about how their backstory and their character might have changed since Riot kind of came up with them. So anyways, a couple of qualifications before I start going through the ones of these that I think are the most important. If you're a lore fan, you're going to get a lot out of this. If you're not, sorry, I spent a lot of time talking about gameplay. Wanted to take a little bit to do some lore. So anyways, I did want to make sure that people know that these bios are not solid. They're not set in stone. A lot of these are being created for champions that Riot aren't quite sure where they're taking the champion yet. Kayle and Morgana immediately come to mind. A lot of people were upset with Morgana's bio as they were saying it portrayed Morgana in a negative light. But the thing about it is they're so far out from being reworked or having new lore written that Riot don't even know what they're doing with Kayle or Morgana. The direction they've written in their short form bios is just one direction they could take. So if I say something that you guys disagree with, keep that in mind, especially if the champion is not even close to being reworked or refinished. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into it. I have a brief list here I wanted to run down talking about a few champions. First up, Aatrox. His backstory discusses his time when he was a sword, and it reconfirms the fact that Aatrox and the rest of the Darkin were basically once invaded Runeterra. They were somehow trapped inside their weapons a long time ago by some powerful magic, and of late they're starting to, two of them at least, have re-emerged. Aatrox has found a worthy host and dominated him and is now trying to exact vengeance on the destruction of most of his kind. Obviously we know about Rost, who is still struggling with Kayn as of this moment. I just thought that was kind of interesting to note. Annie is actually still living in Noxian lands. The lands where she was living in is actually north of Noxus. And Tibbers is no longer a shadow bear that she ensorcelled at an early age. Instead, it's literally her teddy bear that she's turning into a giant hell bear. So that is something to keep in mind going forward, as that is something that she does. Ashe is now what's called an Iceborn War Mother. So that's her official title, and her clan basically believes her to be Avarosa's reincarnation, which is a really interesting way of thinking about it. If they do actually have reincarnation, it would explain how she can use Avarosa's bow. It's also mentioned that Ashe is looking to reclaim her tribe's ancestral homeland, so she's not just playing defense, she actually is trying to lead her clan to try and recover something that they have lost. Brand is now potentially related to a world rune. Keegan Road basically touched a world rune and he burst into flames, and now he's a Spirit of Fire. I don't quite know how this is syncing up. For a while people were thinking that the Spirit of Fire that was mentioned in Nasus and Renekton's long form bios was Brand, but now that's kind of all thrown into question unless Keegan Road touched the world rune ages ago, at which point maybe it's Brand. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with that. We'll see which direction Riot choose to go with it. Cho'Gath, interestingly enough, can actually lose mass. So we obviously know he eats things to get bigger, but if he doesn't want to be bigger, if he wants to reduce himself in size, he can lose mass by ejecting the Vorpal spikes. And this is interesting because, first of all, it shows us that Cho can get shorter, or smaller, I guess, whereas before we just thought he eternally got bigger to some big kaiju, but it also means that Cho is smart enough to realize that size isn't everything. Sometimes being smaller is better. So interesting to note that he is even smarter than we gave him credit for. Corki is now actually a part of Piltover. The Screaming Yip Snakes presumably are part of Piltover's defense force. Makes a lot of sense for why Piltover hasn't been conquered by Noxus yet, and it puts Corki into Runeterra as a player. Before he was just part of Bandle City, which as far as we know right now doesn't really have anything to do with Runeterra. And I'm interested to see where they're actually going to take Vhagar, as well as he still hasn't been written into Runeterra, whereas most of the Yordles have at least gotten some sort of bio by this point. Darius, the only thing worth mentioning is that he is now a member of the Treferian Legion. He's the leader of the Treferian Legion. My question is if this is basically the Noxian equivalent of the Dauntless Vanguard that Garen leads, or if this is just some other military organization, presumably the Fist of Noxus that nobody really wants to mess with. Draven also has been changed a little bit. There's nothing in his short form bio that talks about executions. Instead, it talks about battles between Noxian Reckoners, which kind of feels like gladiatorial fights to me. So there might be a title change upcoming for Draven if he is no longer going to be the Glorious Executioner. Maybe he's the Glorious Reckoner, the Glorious Gladiator, something along those lines. I don't know. It could be a direction Riot choose to take him in. Clearly, though, the lore bio he has on the universe page is not quite accurate at this time. Fiddlesticks finally has a backstory. We know who he is following the Great Retcon. Fiddlesticks is now basically a guy who was tied up and left to starve in his fields by his neighbors, and he was reborn as this scary scarecrow demon thing. That's basically all we know, but we do know that that is part of what they're going to be doing upcoming. So it'll be interesting to see where they decide to go in the future with Fiddlesticks. Fizz, the thing worth noting is that he's an amphibious Yordle, so Yordles are not just furry, they can be fishy as well. I don't know if that's going to stick or not, but it is an interesting place to take Fizz, especially given that most people already assumed that Fizz was a Yordle. Aurelia, and this is important because Aurelia is getting reworked recently, so this may be indicative of the direction Riot choose to take her creative in, at least. Aurelia was raised under the Noxian occupation, so when Noxus occupied the southern parts of Ionia, Aurelia was born there and raised in their shadow, and she taught herself the Psychic Blade style. So she wasn't killed and then resurrected, or almost killed and then resurrected by Soraka, however you want to interpret that. Instead, she learned how to control blades with her mind and now fights to liberate her homeland from Noxus. It plays into a lot of the same tropes that Aurelia has been in before, but I think potentially gives her a very interesting angle. So I'm really excited to see now what direction they do take the Aurelia rework in. Of course, that is a ways off. Jarvan IV, they've only hinted at a possible story arc, basically him being torn between the responsibilities he has to the crown and to his family, and also his desire to fight on the front line. It's kind of a classic trope, I guess, for royalty characters who are also warriors, but it's interesting to see that Riot are choosing to take Jarvan in this direction, because before he didn't really have any arc going for him. He was just kind of this badass warrior prince dude, I guess. Jax actually is really interesting as well. We know who he is now. He was a weapons master formerly of Acathia. When Acathia basically fell to the void, he was corrupted, but clearly he still kept most of his mind. His body has just changed, and now he wanders the world looking for people who can fight as well as him, because he's trying to recruit them to fight against the void menace that is coming. So presumably that's why he fights with the lamppost. If you can beat him when he's fighting with the lamppost, you're probably worthy enough to stand at his side when the void comes. So really interesting to see the direction they took with Jax. We actually know where he's come from and why he's purple and three-fingered with a lot of eyes. Karma has also been changed a little bit. She is now the living embodiment of an ancient soul that's been reincarnated throughout the centuries, which is kind of a weird direction to take Karma in. She's basically the Avatar now. If you've watched Avatar: The Last Airbender at all, she's Aang or Korra or whomever. But she's basically the same person. It's just interesting to note that she says that she's not supposed to use her power that much because it has consequences for the land itself. So she's sort of tapped into Ionia, I guess, and she uses its power whenever she needs to help the country, but she's also not supposed to because it drains some of Ionia's innate magical energy, and presumably that will have consequences if it's drained too far. So basically she's just way more badass than she used to be, is kind of how I'm going to interpret this. LeBlanc, we have confirmed her as it's more of a title, and she's not exactly human. She's what's called the Pale Woman, which I know some blogs have been using that phrase for a while now. And basically, the Pale Woman who is known as LeBlanc, has influenced Noxus for centuries. That sort of thing has been around before, but it's interesting to note that no one really knows who or what LeBlanc is. She's not just a random person bearing the title. She may be an otherworldly being. We're not really sure at this point. Malphite finally has a place in the League of Legends universe, as they're no longer going with the whole alien thing. No champion is now an alien. They all have come from Runeterra. Malphite is basically, he was the servitor of this giant thing called the Obelisk, which is a part of Runeterra. It was destroyed in some cataclysm, and Malphite was the only survivor. So now he's basically wandering around trying to find what else he can do. So interesting to see that, and I'm glad that Malphite finally has a place in the lore of the game, as for a while he just kind of didn't exist. Malzahar has also been changed a little bit. He's no longer a seer. Instead, he is, quote, a zealot seeking unification of all life, which immediately brings to mind the Phyrexians from Magic the Gathering to me. If you're familiar with the franchise, all will be one. Presumably his desire for unification led him to Acathia, and from there he was corrupted by the Void and now serves as its prophet. So it'll be interesting to see where creative take him. I know he had this whole seer backstory. He was a prophet, and then his prophetic visions led him to the Void, and that's why he has Malefic Visions and Nethergrasp as abilities. So it'll be interesting to see how Riot work with that in the future. Anyways, those are the most interesting tidbits I found in the lore updates. I've linked them down in the description below, so you guys can take a look through all of the reworks and see what direction Riot may be taking your favorite champion. Go ahead and let me know what you guys think of the new bios down in the comment section below. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. And if you would love to see more Vorthos podcasts from me, talking about the creative aspects of League of Legends and the story aspects of League of Legends, please let me know. I love this stuff to death, and I would love to do more content, but I would also love to know what you guys want to see. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like, and if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. And if you're hungry for more Grab the Lantern content, you can check out my blog, grabthelantern.tumblr.com. I upload a new article just about each and every single day for your viewing pleasure. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I will talk to you all later.